Let's be honest. Have you ever noticed how some people love to test your boundaries by projecting their shadow onto you? They interrupt, make passive-aggressive comments, or act as if your time and feelings don't matter, expecting us to just smile, put on a persona, and let it happen. Not today. If you're tired of tolerating people who don't respect you, whose behavior undermines your mental integrity, this video is for you. Today, I'll share ruthlessly honest, possibly somewhat controversial ways to deal with disrespect without losing your composure, connection with your ego, or sacrificing your self-respect and connection with yourself. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel to not miss the next video on personal and spiritual growth. You'll find content that inspires, challenges, and changes your perception of life. Now, let's get started. So, get ready because by the end of this video, you'll have all the tools to show people where your psychological line is drawn. Let's go. First, adopt the silent gaze. The power of the observing ego. Let's start with one of my favorite, slightly harsh from the ego's perspective of another person, techniques, the silent gaze. You might be thinking, seriously, just staring? Yes, trust me on this. When someone openly disrespects you, projecting their shadow, nothing unsettles them more than a long, calm, absolutely unperturbed gaze from your aware ego. Here's why it works. But when you simply look at them without words, without obvious emotions, from the position of the observing ego, suddenly the balance of power shifts. I understand it might seem a bit passive-aggressive, but hear me out. For someone used to eliciting a reaction, there's nothing more unsettling than the absence of the expected response. When you hold a steady, silent gaze, you wordlessly say, "I'm not playing this unconscious game with you." It's a way to regain control of the situation without succumbing to provocation, without lifting a finger, and sometimes this silent gaze is the clearest and most powerful no you'll ever say. The clearest boundary. Let me tell you about a time when this technique worked like magic. I was in a group meeting where one guy kept interrupting me, cutting me off. You know the type? Loud, self-assured, thinking everyone came to hear his wisdom, inflated ego. I tried to get a word in, tried to be polite, but he wouldn't stop. And then finally, I just looked at him, leaned back in my chair, and held his gaze without blinking, without emotion. Just stared for a good 5 seconds. I didn't say a word. The tension built, and best of all, everyone else at the table started looking at him too, wondering what he would do. Know what happened? He got flustered, stumbled over his words, and suddenly started looking anywhere but at me. He didn't interrupt me again in that meeting. That silent gaze did more than any words could have. And it didn't just stop his behavior in that moment. He started treating me with more respect after that, as if he finally realized I wasn't someone he could just walk all over, that my ego was stable. Sometimes you have to show people who you are without saying a word, just by being present in your power. Let's dig a little deeper because this is about more than just displaying ego strength. When you adopt the silent gaze, it's like reminding them and yourself that you don't have to dance to their tune, react to their projections. You owe no one an emotional reaction. And you don't have to prove your worth to people who don't see your value or project their inadequacies onto you. It's about reclaiming your psychological space, your world, and your dignity. Often, when someone disrespects us, we feel the urge to defend our ego, explain ourselves, or worse, let it happen because we don't want to make a scene, fear conflict, or judgment of the persona. But the silent gaze isn't about aggression, it's about showing that you're grounded, unshaken, in control of your emotions, and not falling for their unconscious manipulations. It's also about accountability. Those who are used to disrespecting others often do so without thinking, driven by their complexes. They've never faced real consequences for their poor behavior. When you give them that silent, impartial gaze, it's like holding up a mirror to them. Suddenly, they're left alone with themselves. I've noticed that the silent gaze tactic does more than just make the other person back down. It also strengthens your self-esteem, your connection with yourself. When you stand there in silence and calm, you remind yourself that their words or actions can't shake you unless you allow them to. I used to be the one who nervously laughed and tried to explain my choices when someone questioned them, but honestly, it just drained my mental energy and made me feel worse. Learning to just look at someone, let the silence fill the room, without yielding to the pressure, was a real breakthrough for me. It's like a small act of psychological defiance, a quiet but powerful statement of self-respect. Next time someone behaves rudely, crosses your boundaries, or makes you feel small, try it. Silently gaze at them. Just look at them. Let them feel the weight of your calm, your presence. You'll be surprised at how much it unsettles them and how much it empowers you. The silent gaze says, I respect myself and my inner world too much to be drawn into your negativity. And that's a message worth sending. Second, embrace silence as your response, refusing to engage in projections. Here's a little secret psychological weapon that's incredibly underrated. Silence. When someone disrespects you, one of the most powerful responses can be no response at all. Now, I know what you're thinking. Silence seems passive. Almost like you're letting them get away with it. But here's the truth. Silence is far from passive. It's a conscious choice. And sometimes it's the bravest, loudest in a psychological sense, response you can give. When someone throws negativity at you, projects their shadow, they're trying to pull you into their drama, their complexes, make you feel small or defensive. But when you don't engage, when you just let their words hang in the air without a response, it stops them in their tracks. Your silence disrupts their expectation, their usual pattern of interaction. And that silence is deafening. Here's why it works so well. People who disrespect others usually expect a reaction. They're looking for an argument, an excuse, aggression, or just some validation for their behavior, confirmation of their power over you. But silence says, I'm not giving you my mental energy. By not playing their game, you retain control over the conversation and yourself, and you make it clear, your words have no power over me. I'm above your disrespect. Sometimes the most powerful way to communicate is not to communicate. It's a quiet, subtle reminder that they're not worth your time or words, your mental energy. I remember once being in a situation with someone who just couldn't resist making snide remarks. You know the type, who hides their insults behind jokes and tries to pass them off as harmless fun. So one day, he said something completely unnecessary about my work, clearly just to get under my skin. Normally, I would have tried to explain myself or maybe even snapped back with a retort. But this time, I just looked at him, raised an eyebrow, and said nothing. I let his words hang in the air, let him feel that awkward silence. And you know what? He didn't know what to do. He looked at me, then looked away, mumbled something, and walked off. That was the last time he tried that with me. It was like a realization that if I don't react, there's no point in continuing. And that's the beauty of silence. It denies disrespect the attention, the mental energy it craves. Here's the deeper message. When you choose silence, you choose yourself, your integrity. You say, I refuse to let your negativity define my mental space. But by embracing silence, you refuse to play by their rules, not engaging in their game, not feeding their complexes with your reaction, not lifting a finger. You let them know, you're not worth my words. And it's not just about controlling the situation, it's about reclaiming your mental energy. Silence is like a psychological filter. It preserves your peace by blocking the negativity others try to project onto you. The moment you stop feeling the need to respond to every rude comment or jab, you free yourself. You stop giving people indiscriminate access to your inner world and start living by your own rules, from your center. I'll be honest with you, learning to use silence wasn't easy for me. I thought that if I didn't defend myself, my ego, I would look weak or passive. But I started noticing something interesting. Every time I responded to people who disrespected me, I ended up feeling drained, pulled into their negativity. But when I held my tongue, when I let their comments pass by like white noise, I realized I felt lighter, stronger, more in control. It was like I was reclaiming a piece of my power, my mental energy, every time I chose silence over reactivity. So here's a challenge for you. Next time someone disrespects you, just pause, take a deep breath, look them in the eye if it's safe, and say nothing. Let your silence speak for itself. You might be surprised at how much it unsettles them and how much it frees you. Embrace silence as your response because sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful statement of all. Third, stop explaining your choices. Autonomy of the ego. Okay, this will resonate with many of us. Stop explaining your choices. Seriously, how many times have you made a decision for yourself only to have someone immediately ask you why? Why did you do that? Why didn't you go to that event? Why did you take that job? People seem to think they're entitled to an explanation for everything we do. And here's the honest psychological truth. They're not entitled to that. Your choices are your own, a result of your individuation path. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you live your life unless it violates someone else's boundaries. It might seem controversial, but let's face it. If someone questions your choices, they're often not seeking to understand you. They're seeking to judge, evaluate, fit you into their framework, or satisfy their curiosity. They're looking for gaps to make you doubt yourself or feel better about themselves by projecting their own fears or envy, making you invade your psychological boundaries with explanations. And you know what? You're not obligated. Let's delve deeper. Why do people feel entitled to an explanation? It's often because your decision challenges their worldview, their established complexes, or persona. Maybe you're taking a risk they're too afraid to take, or perhaps you're stepping outside the norms they find comforting. Your independence, your authenticity, or willingness to do things differently might unsettle them on an unconscious level. And by asking you questions, they're trying to put you back in your place, within their understandable framework. But just because they feel uncomfortable doesn't mean you have to soothe them or conform. Your life isn't a public announcement. And you're not obligated to justify your choices to anyone. I remember deciding to change careers, moving from a secure job to something more fulfilling. At first, I tried to explain, talking about how I wanted something more satisfying for the soul, how I had a plan. But I quickly realized that no matter what I said, it never seemed enough. The more I explained, the more questions people asked. Then one day, I decided to try something new. When someone asked, "Why did you leave that job?" I simply replied, "Because I wanted to," without extra details, without dissecting my strategy. Just a simple answer. And let me tell you, it was liberating. The silence that followed was everything. People didn't know how to react because I took away their opportunity to question my decisions. And you know what? They eventually stopped asking. That's the real beauty of refusing to explain. It's freeing. It means standing your ground, knowing that your decisions are good enough simply because you made them, that they come from your inner center. When you stop justifying yourself, you give yourself permission to live authentically, without the burden of others' expectations and projections. You stop spending your mental energy on explanations and start investing it in the life you truly want. Here's an important lesson. Your life doesn't need an audience's approval. You're the main character of your story, and only you decide what the next turn will be. It doesn't matter if others understand or approve. And when you stop explaining yourself, you let people know, "I'm confident in my choices and don't need your approval." Think about it. When was the last time you saw a truly confident, psychologically mature person explaining their decisions in detail to others? Probably never. Because people who own their lives, their self, don't need external validation. They know that the only approval that matters is their own, coming from within. Listen, I've been in your shoes. I was the person who gave a full PowerPoint presentation explaining why I was doing something, just to convince people. But over time, I realized that by explaining myself to everyone, I was only making myself doubt my decisions. So I made a deal with myself. If someone asks me about a decision, I give a brief answer. Maybe 1 or 2 sentences. If they insist on more, I smile and change the subject or walk away. And you know what? Life became much easier. The less I explained, the more confident I became in my decisions. So here's my suggestion for you. Next time someone questions your choices, resist the urge to explain. Just say, "Because I wanted to," or "It was right for me." then let the silence speak for itself. See how powerful that simple statement can be. You'll feel stronger, more in control of your life, and more at peace with yourself. And best of all, you'll realize that your decisions don't need others' approval. They're valid simply because you made them. Fourth, keep your distance. Psychological boundaries and energy. Let's be honest, sometimes the best way to deal with people who don't respect you is simply to keep your distance, establish psychological distance. I know it sounds harsh, maybe even a bit cold, but here's the harsh truth. Not everyone deserves a front row seat. This doesn't mean you hate them or that you're being dramatic. It means you value your world, your psychological well-being, and your mental energy. Keeping your distance isn't about being mean or ignoring people. It's about consciously choosing where and how you spend your time and mental energy. Imagine your life as a club with limited access. Not everyone gets a pass. If someone constantly violates your psychological boundaries, makes you feel small, activates an inferiority complex, or just radiates negativity, projects their shadow, why should you keep them close? It's okay to step back. In fact, it's necessary for preserving your integrity. Distance can give you clarity, the opportunity to see things as they are, without the fog of emotional manipulation, projection, or guilt. Think about it. When you give yourself space from these people, you're protecting your mental health, preserving your inner world, and making room for those who truly respect and support you on your path. Letting go of the guilt of keeping your distance can be liberating. You're not obligated to keep people in your orbit who don't respect you or tear you down. Let me tell you a little story. I had a friend who always managed to make snide comments about every choice I made, career, relationships, even my taste in music. At first, I thought, well, that's just his personality, maybe I'm overreacting. So I kept him close, tried to ignore it, thinking it wasn't that big of a deal. But over time, those little jabs started to get under my skin. I began avoiding conversations with him, tensing up before meetings, preparing for the next critique, the next joke. And you know what? I felt relieved. I felt freer. Here's the thing. Some people will tell you that keeping your distance is selfish. They'll say, but it's family, or you've been friends for so long. Society often pressures us to maintain connections at all costs. It can be uncomfortable, even a bit taboo, to acknowledge that someone you know well just isn't a good psychological fit for you. Society tells us to be loyal, forgiving. But at what cost? Here's a little secret. Protecting your psychological world isn't selfish. It's survival. You're not obligated to be someone's emotional punching bag or a source for their projections. Your primary responsibility is to yourself, to your individuation path. Especially when you realize that their behavior isn't about you. It's about their own unresolved issues, their shadow, their complexes. It's not your job to fix them or be a source of their approval. It's just to step back. That's where it gets serious. Keeping your distance is a powerful reminder that you are your own priority. You're not obligated to play a role someone else has assigned to you. You're not obligated to give anyone access to your mind, time, or emotions if they abuse it. When you establish distance, you're saying, my well-being comes first. And it's not just self-care, it's self-respect. Distance also gives you a chance to focus on relationships that truly matter, on those that nourish your soul, that genuinely support you. Think about it. The more time you spend with people who respect you, the more confident and happier you feel. The farther you keep from those who belittle you, the less opportunity they have to influence your thoughts, moods, and life. I used to feel a lot of guilt about keeping my distance from people, even if they treated me poorly. I thought, what if they think I don't care about them? Or maybe I'm overreacting? But over time, I realized that keeping my distance isn't rejection, it's creating space for growth. When I started allowing myself to keep my distance from disrespectful people, I felt a new kind of freedom. I had more mental energy, more peace, and a clearer idea of who I wanted in my life. So here's my challenge for you. Think about the people in your life who consistently disrespect you, make you feel small, or drained. Then ask yourself, do they really deserve such close access to my inner world? If not, fifth, hold your head high. Inner posture and self. Okay, let's talk about a classic that never goes out of style: hold your head high. I know it might sound like generic advice like be more confident, but trust me, it's real psychological gold when dealing with people who don't respect you. Here's the thing. When someone disrespects you, they often unconsciously count on making you feel small, insignificant. They want you to doubt yourself, lower your eyes, shrink. But when you stand tall and hold your head high, you wordlessly say, I know exactly who I am, and nothing you say or do will make me feel less. There's immense psychological power in that. Confidence that comes from within makes people uncomfortable, especially those who don't respect others. Why? Because they rely on the idea that their words or actions can affect you, control you. When you don't allow their disrespect to touch your inner center, when you literally stand taller in a psychological sense and hold your head high, you show them they have no power over you. You're not broken. And people who thrive on disrespect don't know what to do with that. It confuses them, makes them doubt their power, not your worth. I remember a situation with someone who couldn't resist throwing little insults every time we met, you know the type, always with a smirk, always with a joke that's more like an attack. At first, I tried to ignore it, but honestly, it made me feel small. Then I decided I wasn't going to feel that way anymore. I went into the next meeting with my shoulders back, head held high. And every time they made their comments, I just looked them in the eye, smiled calmly, not nervously, and continued the conversation as if nothing had happened. And you know what happened? They actually started to back off. It was like they sensed their comments no longer affected me, that I was too high for their psychological games, and suddenly their power was gone. There's something magnetic about a person who holds their head high despite the circumstances. It speaks of inner strength, a connection with the self. It says, I know my worth, and I don't need your approval to feel good. It's not arrogance, it's self-respect. Now here's where it gets interesting psychologically. People who don't respect you often hate to see you confident. It disrupts their worldview, their complexes. They want to believe they're above you, that they have something over you. Holding your head high is about choosing your inner reality, your connection with the self, not the reality someone is trying to impose on you. It's about saying, I refuse to play your humiliation game. I choose self-respect. And that's psychologically powerful. It's about taking responsibility for your state and refusing to let others' negativity define it. And let's be honest. It can make you a target for those who feel threatened by your strength. But here's the thing. Holding your head high isn't about them, it's about you, it's about living as if you're fully aware of your inner worth, as if you have nothing to prove. And that can seem like a radical act of self-respect in a world that often tries to diminish us. You're making a statement about your self-worth. You're telling the world and yourself how you expect to be treated. You see yourself as valuable, deserving of respect, enough on your own. And here's the depth. Self-worth isn't something you earn or receive from others. It's something you declare about yourself when you walk with your head held high, regardless of what others think or say. You go through life as if you already have everything you need inside, because you truly do. Holding your head high is a constant reminder that you're the main character of your story, your individuation. For me, it wasn't natural. I used to slouch when people were critical or dismissive. It seemed safer to disappear, shrink. But over time, I started noticing that when I held my head high and didn't let someone's negativity penetrate my spirit, I felt a shift. Holding my head high. Here's my challenge for you. Next time you feel disrespected, whether it's a subtle hint or an outright insult, don't react impulsively. Instead, take a deep breath, straighten your shoulders, and hold your head high. Look them in the eye if it's safe, as if to say, I see you, but I'm above this. You'll feel a surge of confidence, a sense of peace, knowing that their words have no power over you. Holding your head high is more than just good posture. It's a statement of your self-respect. It says, I know who I am. I value myself, and nothing you say will change that, because in the end, respect starts with you. The more you respect yourself, the less room there is for disrespect. Stand tall, value your worth. And remember, you deserve this confidence. Conclusion. Sometimes the strongest people are those the world tries to break, but they refuse to fall. Those who are misunderstood and perhaps never will be. Life is too short to spend it trying to please people who don't see your value, don't resonate with your path. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to stand tall. Protect your psychological world, and live by your own rules in accordance with yourself. People will try to confuse you, test your boundaries, doubt your choices. That's just the world we live in, a world of projections and complexes. But here's the thing. You decide what energy to let in and what standard to set for how you're treated. The best part is, the more you focus on yourself, it all starts with you. Own your power, your connection, yourself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and maybe subscribe to the channel to see more content about managing your life, understanding your psyche, and building self-confidence. Share this with someone who needs a reminder to stand tall, and leave a comment. If you have a story about how you dealt with disrespect or set psychological boundaries, I'd love to hear it. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay strong. And remember, respect starts with you.